Lord or Lady Frisk of Ottertail sat in their bumping carriage quietly, and with only the sound of pouring rain to accompany them. As the sky had turned blacker of night, no one was more on edge of the dangers that could be lurking than the horses who pulled the carriage. Not that the driver or the chauffeur were particularly happy to be out in the pouring rain when there could be vampires hiding in the pitch black. These were dangerous times for traveling at night. Word of vampires seemed to be everywhere in the kingdom these days. "My lady, may I suggest that we stop for shelter tonight? The horses are tired and can't see a thing in this dark," the driver yelled through the wood of the carriage to his passenger. They thought about it as they looked through their small window. In desperate times. "Very well, take us to Castle Dreamtale," they responded politely. Before leaving on their long trip, they had hoped that they would be able to just pass Dreamtale without stopping. But the weather had other plans, as it usually did. The Lord or Lady Frisk did suppose that there were worse places to stay than Dreamtale. After all, Lord Dream was always known to be a kind host, as well as being a good friend to many in the land of Ottertail. Not to mention, the rumors about Lord Nightmare were just fiction. Probably. Before long, their carriage was being pulled up the road to the castle and stopped in front of the grand doors. The chauffeur hopped off the back of the carriage and quickly went to the carriage door to retrieve her lord or lady. "Quickly now, my lady." She took their hand to help them down as the chauffeur used her coat to protect them from the rain and run to the doors. Lord and Lady Frisk pounded on the doors with her fist until the butler peeked the door open. "Who is it?" the butler of the castle asked. "Lady Frisk of Ottertail, please tell the lords of the house that I'm here." They spoke with an understandable urgency. "Of course, my lady. Please come in." He opened the door for them before Frisk's chauffeur ran off to assist the driver. Lord or Lady Frisk took a sigh of relief as they walked inside. Sheltered from the rain, but now at the mercy of social interaction, lit by candlelight. They had never been in Castle Dreamtale before, though immediately it was obvious to Frisk that the castle was made of a much older architecture than their mansion at home. They, of course, lived with their foster mother back in Outertail. The tapping of footsteps on the grand staircase drew Frisk to look away from the old castle walls and ceilings. Lord Dream met golden eyes with Lord Lady Frisk at the same time as each other. "Lord or Lady Frisk, what a pleasant surprise!" Lord Dream was all smiles, as he usually was. He quickly made his way down to the steps just to greet his guest, with his glittering gold cape flowing behind him gracefully. "I do apologize for arriving without writing to you first, and at such a late hour." They apologized as they both cupped each other's hands in a friendly manner. "Nonsense! That dreadful weather has already made you so cold. We're glad to have you for the night." Dream escorted Lady or Lord Frisk to the next room where the butler was already adding more wood to the fireplace. "I'm afraid that I can't stay very long as it is. My trip is a rushed one and I need to be back on the road at first light tomorrow," they informed. Usually, it was a little rude to stay the night and leave before having breakfast. It could be read as, "I don't actually want to be here," and severely offend a host. "If you must, I wouldn't want to keep you from where you're going anyway. As I said, we're just glad to see you at all." Lord Dream seemed to be very easygoing about their desire to leave so quickly. Lucky for Frisk, since they truly didn't want to be here. "If I may ask, though, is it Lord or Lady Frisk this night?" As kind of a host as Lord Dream was, Lord Nightmare frightened most people whether they believed in the rumors or not. "Lady is fine, thank you for asking," Lady Frisk answered with a smile as they warmed their hands and legs by the fire. They were so ready to jump into a warm bed and avoid running into Lord Nightmare if at all possible. "Very well, and if you haven't eaten yet, would you join us for dinner?" he asked. "We were just about to start, and I wouldn't want you to go hungry under my roof." "If it's no trouble." Despite Lady Frisk's desire to avoid Lord Nightmare, their stomach was eating their corset at the mention of dinner. "None at all, if I may." Dream offered his arm to Lady Frisk. They linked arms with Dream as a friendly smile grew on their face, and he escorted them to the dining room. Lord Nightmare was already sitting at the end of the table waiting for Dream, though he wasn't expecting someone else to be following him. Lady Frisk gulped upon seeing Nightmare sitting in the dark candlelight. Goodness, He even looked like a vampire in this lighting. But those silly rumors weren't true, so Lady Frisk had nothing to worry about. "Good evening, Lord Nightmare." Lady Frisk bravely greeted him as they slightly bowed their head to him, resisting the urge to do a full-on curtsy based on the sole idea that disrespecting him would make him furious. "Evening," he spoke back. His deep voice made him sound like he was displeased with their very existence, but still Lady Frisk resisted the urge to kiss his boot out of sheer fear of him. "Lady Frisk will be staying the night to seek shelter from the weather. They say that they can't stay for breakfast tomorrow, however." Dream spoke so calmly to Lord Nightmare that it made Lady Frisk think perhaps Lord Nightmare wasn't actually displeased with them. Perhaps that was just how Lord Nightmare naturally spoke. "Very well. I will inform the staff so your carriage will be ready to go by the time you're woken up tomorrow," Lord Nightmare informed, before sipping his glass full of what Frisk bravely assumed to be red wine. "Thank you, my lord." Lady Frisk smiled to him. Nightmare simply glanced up at Frisk with a scowl, which quickly made them turn away from Lord Nightmare. Though Lady Frisk had to wonder if he was truly scowling, or if that was again just simply how Nightmare looked at people. If Lord Nightmare was not a vampire, then he sure was not a very friendly mortal. The servants walked in with plates of food and set them in front of each of the lords and their guests, as well as placing additional plates in the center of the table for everyone to take from as they pleased. "This all looks incredible," Lady Frisk couldn't help but praise. "I'm sure the chef would be happy to hear you say that." Lord Dream smiled as everyone dug in. Lady Frisk couldn't help but notice that the silverware wasn't silver at all, but it was gold-plated. One would think that King Azrael himself was eating with the two lords from just how extra it was to eat with gold-plated cutlery, unless they were purposely not using the silverware for some reason. Lady Frisk knew that they were pushing their luck by letting themselves think of such things. "Lady Frisk, how is everyone back in Outertail? Good, I hope?" Dream asked to break the silence. "Yes, they're— Oh my goodness, I am deeply sorry. I haven't expressed how sorry I was to hear of Lady Nim's passing." Frisk was ready to hide under the table for forgetting something like that. The host's mother had died suddenly, and they hadn't even said anything about it. Both Lord Dream and Nightmare jumped at Lady Frisk's sudden outburst. "No, please, don't apologize. It's quite all right." Dream tried to reassure them. "You didn't kill her," Nightmare muttered passively. "Our mother's death really wasn't as sudden as everyone makes it out to be. But please, there's no point in speaking about things like death at the dinner table." Dream would rather not talk about it. "Of course, you are right." Frisk sank in their seat, more embarrassed and uncomfortable than before. Still a part of them wanted to know the truth about Lord Nightmare. They were right there in this castle, and seeing as their mind wouldn't leave them be about the question. Perhaps this was the perfect opportunity to learn the truth and silence Lady Frisk's curiosity with some answers. "It's quite late to be having dinner, isn't it?" Frisk pushed, as they'd already embarrassed themselves. So long as they're not so disrespectful to get kicked out by Lord Nightmare, they should be fine. It never crossed Frisk's mind that Dream could have a foot to kick anyone out himself. "Our family has never been one to shy from the night as others do," Dream answered. "I see, but aren't you afraid?" they asked. "Of what?" Dream was unsure of what Frisk was talking of. "Vampires. They're everywhere now. Isn't that uncommon to hear about them?" Frisk spoke. "Most talk of vampires are just rumors, Lady Frisk. You should be careful of your sources." Lord Dream warned them as Lord Nightmare started to steam with outrage for Lady Frisk's bravery of bringing up the topic of vampires in his house. "But surely you've heard of their growing numbers. It's wise to at least take into account to defend Dreamtail from them," Frisk pushed. "You think us incapable of defending our own land?" Nightmare growled. Dream drank from his glass, passively hiding behind it. "No," Frisk whimpered. "Have you ever seen a vampire, my lady?" Nightmare leaned into the table as he stared them down. "Not that I know of." Lady Frisk gulped quietly, hoping that Dream will save them from Nightmare's stare. Lord Nightmare sat back in his chair at Lady Frisk's answer. He did his best to swallow his rage. When Lord Dream stayed out of what Frisk started, Lady Frisk chose to fight back at Nightmare. "I only mention it because the vampires have been proven to target small villages, village is much like the one on your land. They bravely spoke up. Another rumor, used to scare children to sleep and entertain the old folk who have nothing better to talk about. Lord Nightmare dismissed it. He knew what to look out for to defend Dreamtale. Perhaps you need to stop gossiping with old women like your mother. Nightmare! Dream spoke up disapprovingly. Lord Nightmare scoffed. But if everyone in the kingdom says it, is it truly a rumor, Lord Nightmare? Lady First shot back, stepping perhaps a bit too far towards outright saying, I think you're a vampire. Lord Nightmare glared. It was unmistakable this time. Frisk had crossed a line with him. Everything seemed to stop as Lord Nightmare growled out his lecture. You may as well have said it. Do you think I'm so unaware of the rumors spread about me? Did you think that I would be oblivious to what you are doing? He glared at them. I am not a vampire. Those rumors that you keep in your head were made by the disrespectful people who live off of my own land. That village has not seen a vampire in decades because I defend my land, and that is without the assistance of the King's Guard or the so-called vampire hunters, not to mention that Dreamtale has no army to speak of. I'm sorry, my lord. Lady Frisk sank. You say that you haven't seen a vampire? I have, and they are not so special to deserve the praise that you give them. They're too hell-bent to truly hide among us mortals, so if you do meet one, you'll know it. Do I look hell-bent? Nightmare continued to lecture. No, my lord, they responded. Good. Lord Nightmare sat back in his chair. Tell this to your gossipers. The only power that vampires really have is the fear that they spread by your rumors. There will be no more talk of these lies under my roof. Understood? He spoke as if scolding a child. Yes, my lord. Lady Frisk felt thoroughly defeated, and definitely regretted pushing the subject as far as they did. Everyone went back to eating. The room fell deathly quiet after that. I should write to Sans in Outertale. It's been too long since I've written to him. Lord Dream tried to change the subject. I'm sure that he would like to hear from you. Lady Frisk nodded their head to Dream approvingly before everyone went quiet again. It seemed like forever before Lady Frisk was able to hide in the guest bedroom and sleep off their embarrassing dinner event. Even so, as the beds were maybe the most comfortable they'd felt, it was difficult for them to sleep in such a Gothic castle. The stone walls had next to no insulation, aside from the decorative drapes that hung on said walls, usually showing scenes of trees and stone statues covered in undergrowth of a fruitful garden on the hand-woven banners. Some of the art in the castle could have been 100 years old for all Frisk could guess, maybe more. Lady Frisk got maybe some hours of sleep before they heard muttering and footsteps walk by their door. Curiosity urged them to sit up from their bed. Why do we need to close all the curtains before morning? A young man asked another young woman sleepily. They both must have forgotten or not known that Frisk was sleeping in that particular guest bedroom. But Lady Frisk's curiosity piqued at what the two may have been talking about. They snuck out of bed quietly and went to the door. Because the lord of the house requests it. It is not our place to question why. The young woman was a maid, teaching the other male maid how to do the rounds of the early morning shift. Oh, yeah, the sunlight, duh. The maid laughed at himself. He was tired from doing his first night shift he'd ever done. Frisk creaked their door open as the maid's voices started to fade. Do you want to lose your job? She yelled at him. Please, if I get fired by Lord Nightmare, I'm more likely to lose my neck, the maid joked, earning a good playful elbow in the side from the other maid. He was a vampire. Lord Nightmare was a vampire, and Lady Frisk knew it all along. First light would be coming in soon, and they needed to get out so they could tell someone. Lady Frisk got dressed, taking what was left of their own things and putting them in a case themselves, without the help of one of their servants. Desperate times! They took their poorly packed case of yesterday's travel clothes as they tried to sneak away to the foyer where they knew that their driver and chauffeur would already be getting ready by the carriage. Assuming that Lord Nightmare did indeed tell them to be ready at first light, and that was assuming Lord Nightmare did indeed want Lady Frisk out of his castle and off of his land. Unless Lord Nightmare didn't tell the staff to be ready, and they were going to be trapped in this castle until he knew everything that Lady Frisk knew. What if Lord Nightmare knows what Frisk knows? Goodness, Lady Frisk was tired. How could they let their escape plan revolve around the chance that Lord Nightmare told the staff to be ready? By the time that Lady Frisk was in bed, would have been killed if Lord Nightmare wanted Lady Frisk to never leave. Lady Frisk turned a corner, walking exponentially fast for someone who was guiltless of anything. They ran directly into Lord Nightmare as he was walking down the halls. Lady Frisk yelped upon seeing Lord Nightmare right there in front of them, standing between them and the only way out. They dropped their case to the ground, practically leaping for the curtain next to them and pulling it open to shine the morning sun into the hall. Lady Frisk let out a breath of relief at the sight of the sun's protective ray, but as they turned to see Nightmare standing directly in the sun's ray, he did nothing but squint at the blinding light. I don't understand. Lady Frisk was sure that the sunlight harmed vampires. A burn, or even something as dramatic as flames, should happen to a vampire in sunlight. How dare you? Lord Nightmare seethed with rage. I didn't. Lady Frisk stammered helplessly. I don't want to hear it, you life-sucking leech. He spat venom at them. I give you food and shelter in your time of need, and you make an attempt on my life? I didn't, Lady Frisk objected. What exactly did you think would happen if I was a vampire? When you were convinced that I was one, you seemed to have no problem with what would happen to me. Get out, he growled at them. What? They felt small as they whimpered back. Get off my land, Nightmare roared, making the entire castle shake. Lady Frisk took their case and ran past Nightmare to the foyer. Nightmare made sure to see them out. And if there was a bloodsucker in Dreamtale, I would hunt it and kill it myself! Nightmare yelled before their carriage took off in a hurry. Nightmare let out a deep sigh, watching the carriage leave down the road before closing the door and blocking out the sun. He turned back to Lord Dream, who stood at a safe distance away in the shadows. Did you have to be so mean? He asked. Nightmare went to his side calmly. They're gone, aren't they? Nightmare hummed as he calmed down. That was too close. They were so convinced that you were a vampire. Dream couldn't help but worry for his Nightmare. We shouldn't gain a reputation for scaring away guests. We already have a bad reputation, no thanks to the gossiping leeches in the village. Imagine if they had opened the curtain while you were there, Nightmare growled. Dream wrapped his arms around Nightmare's neck and pulled him down to kiss him softly. Our reputation could be a lot worse, Dream explained as Nightmare wrapped his arms around Dream's waist and pulled him in. I'll gain the people's hearts back, and you keep doing what you're good at. Dream traced his finger along Nightmare's chest. And that is, Nightmare purred at Dream lovingly. Keeping me safe, protecting me, and our home. Dream smiled softly. I thought you would say kissing you, Nightmare teased with a smile. Dream let out an amused huff as Nightmare locked his mouth with Dream's, slipping his tongue into Dream's mouth and feeling along Dream's sharp fangs.